All right, good evening. Daf Yomi for the week is sponsored by Jeffrey and Chava Bela Wall, Lili Nishmas, Jeff's grandmother, Rosalia. Got it. Rosalia Bas Avraham, good Baruch Hashem, who died al Kiddush Hashem in the Thornhill ghetto on the 2nd of Adar, 1942. We are on the third line of Ayin Vav Amud Beis. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Hamesi as Bito Lizakim, somebody who marries his daughter off to an elderly man. V'Hamesi Isha Libno Katan, or he marries a woman to his son, right, who is a minor. Now, we had discussed whether a minor son can actually affect Kiddushin, right? A father has the right to marry off his daughter, but doesn't have the right to marry off his son. So the Mefarshim have some questions on exactly what the circumstance is here, that he is potentially older than 13, let's say. Might be the simplest answer. He's at 13 when he's getting married here, but he's not old enough that he would have the desire to be engaged in relations. V'makzer aveda legoy, also somebody who returns lost items to a non-Jew. So Allah v'kasav omer, the pasuk says, that leman sefos harova es hatzmeya. So you're combining somebody who is hungry to somebody who is somebody who has plenty with somebody who is thirsty. So lo yova Hashem, that is not what lo yova Hashem sloach, lo Hashem cannot forgive that person. That's not a good circumstance because you have an older person and a younger person. Then that's not going to be good for their marriage. Now somebody also has, there's no mitzvah in the Torah to return lost objects to a non-Jew. The mitzvah of returning lost items is to Jewish people. So why would a person return something to a non-Jew? Because he feels that it's just a moral and just thing to do, to return lost things. Well, if that's the case, then whenever you're doing mitzvahs, you're not doing them for the reason that Hashem commanded you and you want to be able to get a mitzvah. You're doing it because you feel that it's the right thing to do. Well, if it's just because of what you feel, then it kind of takes away from all your mitzvahs. So somebody is doing mitzvahs for the idea of what he thinks is valid and what he thinks is right. That is, especially if he's doing things like returning lost items to non-Jews, it kind of degrades all of his other mitzvahs as well. Because you're equating somebody who has plenty of mitzvahs, a Jew, to somebody who is thirsty for mitzvahs, a non-Jew. Meisvei, so we asked one question. Oev es ishto kegufo, somebody who loves his wife like himself. But he honors her more than himself. Rashi says he buys her nice clothing and he takes care of her very well. And he guides his sons and his daughters in straight paths. And he marries them off close to when they are young. Allah v'kasav omer, the pasuk says there, v'yadata ki shalom alecha Upkudas, no, that you should know, this is establishes peace in his tent. This is a good person. This is something that this person is doing good by his family. Velo sechata, and there will not be any sin. So now, question is, you just said that you shouldn't marry off your son when he's that young, because if you do, then his wife is not going to be happy or satisfied. So therefore, it's not a good thing to do. So the answer is no, samach lepirkon shani. If it's right before he is mature, so then that's okay, because she'll wait around 6 months or so till he's mature, and then everything will kick in, and they'll be able to have a happy marriage. So that's not a problem. So these are good. That's good things to do. Tana Rabban, Rabbi said, ha'ohev es shchenov, somebody who loves his neighbor. V'amakriv es krovov, and he brings his relatives close. V'anose es bas achoso, and he marries his sister's daughter. Right, that's part of the question: why sister's daughter? Because he has already a strong family connection, and so this is somebody that he finds easy to love, and therefore he is able to maintain a positive relationship with. Another explanation is that he has a responsibility to take care of his family members, so he decides, instead of letting his wife's daughter his sister's daughter have nobody to marry, he makes sure to take care of his own family. So he marries her. He loans a sela to a poor person when that poor person needs it. Allah v'kasav omer, the pasuk says about him, Al tikrav Hashem, az tikrav Hashem yoneh. He's going to call out, and Hashem will answer him back, because he's there and available to help others when necessary. Tana Rabbanan, oso ve'es hen. So back into our pasuk that talked about the prohibition against having relations with one's mother-in-law and one's grandmother-in-law. Right? This pasuk says that if he has relations with the woman and his daughter, so then they get sreifa. So oso ves achas mehen divrei Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael says the meaning of the pasuk is one of the ladies is going to get sreifa. So what does that mean? That means the wife doesn't get sreifa because she's married to him. The mother-in-law gets sreifa because she's the one that's prohibited. That's how Rabbi Yishmael learns it. Rabbi Akiva says oso ves shtehen. That the pasuk means, no, there's two ladies in this pasuk that are going to get killed. Well, the wife can't get killed because she's the permitted one. So who are the two ladies? He must be talking about the mother-in-law and the grandmother-in-law. Those are the two ladies in the pasuk that if he has relations with the woman and her daughter, that they get sreifa. So about these two. Okay, so now, my beinaihu, what is the difference of perspective between these two opinions? Amar Abayi says, mashmos dorshim ika beinaihu. It is a question of how you understand the words in the pasuk. That's the difference. Because at the end of the day, both of them are going to learn that the mother-in-law and the grandmother-in-law are both prohibited. The question is, how do you learn it out from the pasuk? Rabbi Yishmael says, oso ve'es hen. Oso ve'es achas mehen. So it means him and one of the ladies. What is that? How do you see that? Shekin b'loshen Yavani korin la'achas hena. The word hena in Greek means one. So the pasuk says, oso ve'es hein, right? It means him and one of them. That's how that means. V'im chamoso midrasha osya. And as far as the mother-in-law's mother, that's a separate drush. That's not written directly in the pasuk. Rabbi Akiva says, oso ve'es hen. Him and them, it means oso ves shtehen. It means him and two of them. There's got to be two ladies here. Ve'im chamoso hacha ksiva. And so therefore, the mother of the mother-in-law is written right here. That's the source. So therefore, it's not a separate drasha, as Rabbi Yishmael wants to say. It's written right here. That's what these two ladies are. Rava says that's not how you interpret the argument between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael. Rather, the argument between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael is le'acher misa ika beinaihu. The difference of perspective is whether your wife has died, is there still a prohibition of sreifa? Obviously, there's still a prohibition, but sreifa, is there still sreifa for having relations with one's mother-in-law? Rabbi Yishmael says, chamoso le'achar misa b'sreifa. His mother-in-law, it says, eshein. Even if there's only one, meaning one of the ladies is still alive, the wife has already died, only the mother-in-law is still alive, nevertheless, the punishment is sreifa. Rabbi Akiva says, no, isura bialma, that if there's only one, he says, eshen means the two of them, you are only chayav sreifa if the two of them are alive at the same time. But if not, then it's not going to be sreifa. The Rabbi Akiva says it's isura bialma, it's just a los aseh.
But they're involved together. That's what we're saying.
Who's they?
The mother and the grandmother? Or are we talking about like they're both just chayav? Should one?
They're chayav if he has relations with each of them.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it's okay.
Right? Okay, says the next Mishnah. Okay. Okay. The Eluhain on Neheragin. These are the ones that get hereg. We move on to the next Misa of Basin. Harotzeach, right? Somebody who murders. Ve'anshei ir hanidachas, the men of a city that has worshipped Avodah Zarah. Rotzeach shehikas re'ehu ba'evan o bebarzel, a murderer who hits his friend with a stone or with metal. As we'll see, there's a difference on those. The keves alav letoch hamayim, or he pushes a person into water, or letocha or into fire. And the person is not able to get out of it, right? He pushes the person in such a way, the person can't get out of that situation. Umeis, and he dies, so he's chayiv, then he's liable for murder, because he pushed him into the water or the fire that he can't get out of. If he pushes him into water or into fire, and the fellow should have been able to get out of it, umeis, but he doesn't and he dies, then he's patur. Then he's exempt because it wasn't a death blow, right? He didn't really kill him. For some reason, whatever caused him not to be able to get out of that situation, that's what killed him. Shisabo as a kelev. Let's say he sicks a dog on a person. Shisabo as a nachash, or he sends a snake after a person. Pater, he's exempt because the dog or the snake is the thing that kills him. He caused the dog or the snake, but he didn't actually kill him with a dog or a snake. Hishich bo es hanachash. Now, let's say he actually takes the snake and he gets its fangs out and punctures the guy directly. So Rabbi Yehuda mechayev. Rabbi Yehuda says in that circumstance, then he is chayev for murder. The Chachamim potri and the Chum say, no, you're exempt from murder. That is not, you're not going to be chayev in that case. Says the Gemara. Lots of good questions here about what makes murder and what is not murder here. So, Amar Shmuel, if you thought that murder was simple, it's not. Amar Shmuel, mipnei ma lo nemra yad bebarzel. He says, if you look in the pasuk and it talks about murder weapons, when it talks about the stone, it says, it has the pasuk says, where's the pasuk? 1 second. The pasuk is Rashi quotes the pasuk Kamash Nemar be'even yad, which is bekli eitz yad. It says with a even yad, a stone of the hand, which means that it is a stone of, or it also might, it's a stone with that is of sufficient size that you can hold it in your hand and still have enough of it to protrude on the other end to cause death. Also, same thing, bekli eitz, when it comes to a wood, it says bekli eitz yad, right? A wooden utensil that has enough place for you to grip it with your hand and still use it as a murder weapon. But it does not say the word yad when it comes to a metal murder weapon. A metal murder weapon can be of any size. Even a small item can be a metal murder weapon. Why? Because metal can kill even in the smallest size. It doesn't have to be of sufficient size, as we'll see. Tanya Nami Hachi, we learned in a brisa. Rebbe says, it's clear and revealed before Hashem, who spoke and the world was created. That metal can kill in the smallest amounts, right? You don't need a large metal item to kill somebody. The fichach lo nitna Torah bo shiur, the Torah doesn't give it a size requirement. Why? V'hani mili de barzei mivras. That is talking about when the person stabs or punctures the person, right? Because when he's stabbing or puncturing, even a small metal item can become a murder weapon. Whereas when it comes to a stone or a piece of wood, it's used like a club or some kind of a thing like that. So then it needs to have sufficient size and weight in order to be able to actually be a murder weapon. So that's the distinction we make. Okay. Now the next case of the Mishnah was, he pushes a guy into the water and the guy is unable to get out of the water, so then he's a murderer. But if he can get out, then he's not a murderer. Reisha, even if the guy dies. Reisha ribusa kamash mula, v'seifa ribusa kamash mulan. Both the first case of the Mishnah is coming to tell us some extra special case, and the end is also telling us something new about another special case. Reisha ribusa kamash mulan. What is the extra special important information that's included in the first case? Af agav dilav ihu dachvo. Kevan de'ein yochol la'alos misham umeis chayiv. Says, well, let's say he's not the guy who pushed him, right? So he fell by himself, and this person then holds him underwater, right? So that's what he does. The guy falls by himself. I didn't murder him because he fell by himself. No, even though you didn't push him under the water, once he's under the water, you held him under the water, you are the murderer. That's the importance of the first case. Seifa, the end is ribusa kamashmun. What's the important extra to be able to add in that case? Afal gav de dachvo, kevan de yochel lalos misham umeis potter. The opposite is true. Even if you're the guy who pushed him into the water, if he should have been able to get out of the water, then you're not a murderer. Right? Even if he doesn't get out, you're not a murderer. Kavash mi nolan. How do I know that somebody holds somebody underwater is a murderer? Amar Shmuel says, Damar Kar, the pasuk says, O be'eva. There's an extra word that when you commit the murder, if he does it be'eva, with malice, l'rabos es hametzamtzem, that includes somebody who holds somebody in position in such a way that he causes his death by holding him still. Right? That is what's included from that word. So, for example, Ahu Gavra, there was once a fellow, the fellow took his friend's animal and he held it in place in the sun. He put it in a cage or something out in the sun all day. Umesa, and the animal dies. Okay? So now, Ravina Mechayev. Ravina says he's liable for killing that guy's animal and he's got to pay for it. Ravacha Barav Potter. Rav Acha bar Rav says he's exempt. Ravina mechayev. Ravina says he's chayev. Why? Kal v'chomer, there's a kal v'chomer. Uma rotzech shelo asabel shogeg kemezid v'onis kerotzon chayev. He says, look, when it comes to murder, holding somebody in place such that the person dies, it counts. Holding him in place counts. And we know murder is a more severe circumstance. Why? Because murder, we don't normally assign and say that somebody's a murderer regardless of what his intention is. A murderer, it makes a difference if he did it intentionally, unintentionally, accidentally. So nevertheless, even though it makes a difference, we call him a murderer if he held the person in place. So Chayev Boas Hatzimtzum, we're going to call him liable if he holds the fellow in place. We're on Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph. Nizakin, when it comes to damages, She'asa ben Shogeg Kemezid v'onis Kiratzon. When it comes to damages, the Torah did establish that a person who's negligent and a person who does accidentally, they're the same thing as somebody who does it on purpose. They're all in the same category. You're chayev to pay for damages regardless of whether you did it on purpose or accidentally. So therefore, Eino Din shechayev ben es metzamtzem. Since that's the more lenient circumstance, for sure you should be liable if you held the animal in place and caused the damage. So Rav Acha bar Rav a poter. So Rav Acha bar Rav says he's exempt. Amar of Misharshia. He says the name of Misharshia. He says, "My time de avuha de abba de poter." What is the reason why he says that that circumstance would be exempt, despite the fact that you made a very nice kal v'chomer to explain why it should be chayev? The answer is Amar Kra. The pasuk says so. Mos yumas hamokei rotzeachu. Hu berotzeachu de chayev lon mitzamtzem benizikin lo chayev lon mitzamtzem. The pasuk says that the person who hits and is a murderer, he shall die, which means that this rule that we were talking about of holding somebody in place and murdering them is a rule that applies by a murderer. It's not this miyut. The pasuk is a miyut to tell me that this rule applies only in this circumstance by murder, despite the fact that logically it might be able to apply by damages as well. It in fact does not. Right, holding something in place so that it gets damaged by itself by something that you're holding it in is not the same. Doesn't work the same way. Amar Rava. Rava says, Kafto vames barav. Let's say somebody ties up another person and he starves to death. Potter, he's exempt from being a murderer. From a Rava, now he's chayev mina shemayim, right? Hashem's going to punish him for it, but he's not chayev as a murderer. Why? Because when he got tied up, there was nothing here that was going to kill him, right? There's no cause. He didn't tie him up in such a circumstance that the murder was coming upon him, right? The famine, the death by famine, came upon him separately from the act of tying him up, right? So therefore, he's not the murderer. He didn't cause him to starve to death, even though he kind of did,
it's like
right?
that whole train.
You're right. You're picturing of a guy being tied to a train tracks, right? And
you switch the train to go towards him. So if you didn't, your putter, because you didn't put him in harm's way, but whereas if you threw the person to prevent
this is So we're going to see lots of cases like that. Exactly, right? If I tie the guy to the tracks, right, and somebody else, this is essentially tie the guy to the tracks, and somebody else moves the train onto the track. For sure, I'm not liable because I'm not the one who set up in motion the cause of death. And that's the same thing, even though famine is a naturally occurring thing, the death by not eating is the naturally occurring thing, that's not my thing. I didn't cause him to starve to death. That naturally occurred, but I didn't do it to him. I didn't starve him.
Is it because the person not been tied up?
Correct, but that is what we say exactly. We call it a grumma. I caused it, but I didn't do it. It's not my koach. There's a distinction between what we call grumma, which is something I caused, and koach, which is something I did. To be a murderer, I actually have to do it, not cause it. Okay? For Amar Rava, now we're going to have lots of cases that are, just the very edge of these sort of circumstances here. For Amar Rava, Rava says, Kafto bechama, let's say a guy got tied up and they left him in the sun. Umes, and he dies. Bitzinor, they tie him up and leave him out in the cold, umes, and he dies. Then he's chayev. Why? Because sof chama lavo, sof tzina lavo. So because why? Because when he tied him up, the sun was there, killing him immediately, right? It's not like something that wasn't there, like the famine, right? The Rav wasn't there. The sun was there.
Right.
The cold was there. He tied him up in cold. He tied him up in the sun. therefore he's liable. Sof chamalavo, sof tzina lavo. However, let's say he ties him up in a circumstance where it's not hot outside, it's not cold outside, but it's going to be hot or cold tomorrow, and so he ties him up in a situation so that he will be in the cold and in the heat and die in that, then he's putter, right? Again, same idea. I'm not tying him up in a situation where he's being exposed to something that will kill him. I'm tying him up in such a way that eventually something will come upon him that will kill him. That's not the same thing. You're not liable. Rava says, Kafto lifnei ari. Let's say he ties him up in front of a lion. Putter. You're exempt. The lion killed him, not him. Right? Lifnei yitushin. Chayev. But in front of mosquitoes, then he's going to be liable in that circumstance.
That's weird. Why?
Because
even that logic, the svara, you would imagine if I tie him up in front of the lion, I mean, you're going to say the lion killed him, like the lion was there
because the
sun was there.
Because we're going to say that the lion was there, right? That's exactly right. The lion was there, like the sun was there.
Right.
The mosquitoes are there, just like the sun was there.
Right.
However, even if he wasn't tied up,
right,
the lion would have gotten him. So your tying him up didn't increase his likelihood to die.
Whereas the mosquitoes, he could outrun them.
Now the mosquitoes he could have saved himself from. That's correct. So your tying him up made him liable to the mosquitoes. However, Ravashi says no. Afilu if neyatushin nami putter, even in front of the mosquitoes, you'd be exempt. Why? Because honey osli v'honey osu. These mosquitoes left, and another group of mosquitoes came. In other words, the mosquitoes that actually wound up killing him
were not the ones
that you set him up. So therefore, it's a grum. It's the same thing as the sun wasn't, right? Where I set him up and the sun wasn't there. So therefore, that's where Vashi says.
So if it was like a beautiful day and I tie him up and a freezing cold storm comes and kills him.
Correct. No, I'm not liable. That's what we said.
So that's the grammar.
Good. Itmar. Next. Kafa alav gigis. Let's say he puts an airtight container over his head, right? Or over his whole body so that he suffocates, right? A gigis is like a pit, like a jug or a barrel or something, right? So he puts that over him and he dies. Upara alav maziva, or the guy's sleeping and he takes the roof off his house. So now he's exposed to the elements and he dies. Rava v'Rabbi Zera. So now Rava and Rabbi Zera. Chad amar chayev v'chad amar potter. One says you're liable in that circumstance. One says you're exempt. Now, Tistayim, let's conclude de Rava hu damar potter. Rava's must be the one who says he's exempt. Why? Because there's another situation that sounds similar, and we're going to say this is what Rava holds. Damar Rava says, Kafto umes barav potter. Rava is the one who says that if he ties the guy up and he lets him starve to death, he's exempt. Right. So therefore, we're going to say, what is Rava holding? Rava's holding, since you didn't cause it, but you created the circumstance through which he would eventually die, you are not liable. Similarly, you didn't actually kill him, you just created a circumstance so that eventually the air would run out, or you didn't kill him, but you created a circumstance such that eventually it would get too cold for him to live, you're not liable. That's how we're trying to align the cases.
Right.
But Adirabba, no, let's not hold that way. Tistayim de Rabbi Zera hu damar potter. Let's say it's Rabbi Zera who's the one who says he's exempt. Why? Damar Rabbi Zera holds as follows. Haiman de aile lechavri bebesa de shisha. Let's say somebody brings a friend into a marble structure, meaning that that was airtight, right? They had an airtight structure. The adlik lishraga, and he lights a candle, right? Now he's removing the oxygen from the room. Umeis, and the guy dies. Okay. Now, chayev, he's liable. Why? Time law de'idlik lishraga. It's because he lit the candle. Now, if he didn't light the candle, oxygen would have run out also. But that wouldn't have been enough. He has to light the candle because now his lighting the candle takes the oxygen. Now he's doing it, right? He's pulling the oxygen out of the room. That's what makes him chayev.
The question is, are you causative?
That's correct.
Directly causative.
That's what he's holding.
That's what it is. Okay.
Okay.
But the roof one, I don't understand. How can anybody hold the chayev?
Okay, so we're trying to figure out who holds punter now first, right? So this is the case. This is Rabbi Zera who's holding punter because he holds that in this case, right? If lo idlik leshraga, if he wouldn't have lit the candle, he would have just put him in an airtight room. So then he wouldn't be liable. because that would be the same thing as the gigas of putting him in the barrel, and he would suffocate. So, lo, Amri Hasam, below Shraga, lo maskil hevla, bishate. Hacha below Shraga, nami maskil hevla, bishate. He says, the one second, where'd it go? Out of Shraga, lo Amri Hasam, below Shraga. Because we're saying, when he puts his friend in the place of the marble, if he doesn't light the candle, he's exempt, because without the candle, so then the air doesn't wind up suffocating him when he enters the house. But covering him with the barrel, he says, below shraga nami maskil hevlu b'shatei, that is still going to cause him to suffocate because I guess it's a smaller space. So that you can still hold, even though if he held that he's not liable without putting the candle, he might still hold that he is liable in the case where he put the barrel over him.
Coffin.
Correct, because it's a smaller. I think it's because it's a smaller space, right? Right. So these are all. So he says here that Rava, who exempts in the case of famine, right, is going to say there's nothing here to cause him to be chayiv. He has to actually cause the death. He has to do something to cause it, right? But Rabbi Zera is holding that it's even he even needs less, right? He says only if you're creating the circumstance which eventually caused the death, right? Immediately you're actually causing the circumstance that eventually create the cause of death. He would hold that would be enough to hold the person liable. Okay, so that's why somebody would be liable in that case by the container. Okay, next. Amar Rava says, next case. Dachfo lebor v'sulam bebor. Let's say somebody pushes his friend into a pit. My friend. He pushes somebody into a pit, and there's a ladder in the pit. Uba acher comes another guy, v'salko, and the other guy takes the ladder away. V'afilu hu kodam v'silko potter. Right? Let's say even if the person who
even the person who is quite close to the
original perpetrator,
right? Even if the original person who kodam v'silko, even if he got up himself and he took the ladder away, so he both pushed the guy in and took the ladder away, then he'd be exempt. Why?
If they both pushed him in the ladder away.
No.
If one pushed him in and the other one took the ladder.
That was the first case.
Like
second case is
like,
even.
It's just like chutzah.
Because you're right, but it's not, because we said then the next case was even if he's the guy who pushed him and he's the guy who took the ladder away, you're still exempt.
Oh, okay. So
why? When you pushed him into the pit, he could have gotten out. The ladder was there, so that's not a murder. Taking a ladder away with the guy down there, that's not murdering him. You're creating a circumstance where he will eventually die.
Right. Had he taken the ladder away first,
yes,
and thrown him in,
exactly.
You'd be chayiv.
Correct. Now Rashi says something a little bit wild, which was interesting. Rashi says that even if he takes the ladder away before he falls, he's chayiv. Now, I was like looking at that going, I didn't understand it that way. But what Rashi means is after he pushes him, the guy's, whoa, before he falls in, he pulls the ladder out before he even falls in. It has to be after he pushed him. The act of murder is the push. So if the ladder was in the pit during the push, even if he took the ladder away before the guy fell, he's not liable. Right? His action of the murder action is pushing. Okay. Valmarava. Next case. Zorak bochetz utris biyado. He shoots an arrow at a person, but the guy's got a shield. Right? So it's not going to kill him. Uba acher, another person comes, not low, and he takes the shield away, and now the arrow comes and kills him. Okay? Va'afilu kodem v'not low. Now, even if he himself, who shot the arrow, pulls the shield away. Now, I don't know how fast this guy is, but let's presume that something is pretty fast. Right? Says he outruns the arrow, and he pulls the shield away, causing the arrow to hit its mark. So that's why it must be like he arced it very high, right? So
the guy's really slow. He's like
That's correct. Putter. Why? Because when he shot the arrow, when he fired the arrow, the guy could have been healed. Okay, so there you go. Amar Ravashi says, Hilkoch, therefore, afilu simonim b'shuk, even if you can go to the store and buy medical equipment, right? You're not fatal.
Wait, that's because the shot wasn't considered fatal.
Correct.
Death from
lack of medical equipment.
And if they destroyed the medical equipment prior,
then it would be Nisa.
No, it seems like it has to be at the same time. Otherwise, it's considered a grumma.
No. If you have no medical equipment, let's say you're out in the middle of nowhere,
right.
There's no medical equipment, and then he shoots the arrow at him. Right. That's a fatal shot, right. Because it's impossible to save him, right? But if it was possible to save him, right, you could have airlifted him, right? But then the helicopter crashes, and now you can't. So that's what changes. Amarli Rav Acha Breda Rava Ravashi. Rav Acha, the son of Rava, says to Ravashi, Nizdamnu lo simonim mahu. Let's say it goes the other way. Let's say he fires the arrow, there's no medical supplies. But then, amazingly, something happens, and the medical supplies are available. What happens then? Amarle harayotza mi beistin zakai. He says, then you can get out of beistin by getting off. Why? Because beistin is going to look at the whole entirety of the circumstances, the whole entirety of the case. By the time that the guy got hit, he shouldn't have died because there was medical supplies available to save him.
Right.
So therefore, you're going to get, Basin is always looking for the way to get him out. You're going to get out okay. Vama Rava, next case, Rava says, Zorak Tzrur B'Kosel. Guy throws a rock against the wall, V'chazra la'chorei, and it bounces off the wall, V'harga, and kills a person. Okay, now, this had to be his intent. We always say that murder has to be an intentional thing. So this was his intent. He was trying to...
throw a rock off the wall.
Bounced off, hit the guy.
Gram.
No. Chayev. That's the Chiddush.
I should look.
Right? It's not Grumma. You'd think it's Grumma because the wall caused it.
Right.
But it's not.
And also, it could not hit him.
Right, and that's why it's a Chiddush. The Chiddush is, am I really able to make sure that I threw it off the wall in such a way that it would hit the guy? There's no guarantee that that's what I was going to do. We'll see what that is. Right. But Tana Tuno.
Can you define grama?
Grama means a causative action, right? Not a direct action, something that I do that causes something else to happen.
Right? So we're using Shabbos a lot. Grama.
It's a very complex area, right? It's like there's grama and garmi also.
In the Zikin, yes, we start talking about what is the different levels of how much you cause something, right? About grama versus
I would have not thought that you could. And if I threw a rock here's the question: if I threw a rock and I don't hit the person I meant to hit, and he ducks and I hit another person, you're going to say I'm chayav.
Yeah, I am. Okay.
I get it.
You intended to murder and you did. We're going to see those cases.
Okay.
Vitana tuna. Now, we also learned as follows. Kigon elu hamisakin bekadur. Let's say you've got people who play ball, right? Got game of squash going on, right? Bounce off the wall. Shahargu b'mezid. And the guy gets mad in the squash game and he hits the ball hard off the wall and kills the guy. Neharogim. So then he's going to get killed. B'shogeg, if he kills him b'shogeg, golin, then he's going to go to exile. B'shogeg golin, so he goes to exile if he does it b'shogeg. Pshita, that's obvious. But mezid ne'arogin, he says the case that is the chiddush is that if he did it on purpose, then he's killed. Why? Because ma'odetema, what would you have thought? Hasra safeki, mi yemer dehudra. He says, when the guys warned him, they said to him, don't throw that ball and hit him. And he was going to throw it off the wall. Who says he's going to be that good a shot? That's a difficult shot. And so maybe we would be calling that, we have this called a hasra suffik. That's when I warn somebody, don't do something, but I don't know that they're literally going to do it, which means the warning is not valid. Kamash Malan, no. That being able to throw a rock off a wall or a ball off a wall is something that people can aim, and therefore it's considered a valid warning. Person can do it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You missed the guy. Okay, it hits another wall and then kills him. This means you meant it to hit off that wall and kill him. It
Yeah,
misses.
well, don't get into the cases where he intends one guy and gets the other guy, because those cases are all coming up later. Let's stay in the case.
Kill that guy, but they didn't kill him in the right place.
You're right. Yes. So he intended to kill this guy. He misses him, bounces off the wall, comes back and hits him from the other side. Chayiv.
Still chayiv.
That's what we're saying. Yeah.
It's the same outcome.
Yes.
No, it's not about the outcome. It was that
It
I
is about
didn't
the
mean to kill him in that way.
Well,
No, I but that matters, right? It's like if I say I'm going to be
Doesn't seem right.
right.
As long as we say, unless we say the guy throws the ball, right, and he meant to hit the guy, it bounces off the wall. The wall then falls down and crushes the guy. That might be a grumma. Right? Now he's not liable. That's different. But he intended to kill the guy, but it's not the same.
You threw the ball intending to kill the guy. What happened in between is not
Correct.
important.
Yeah. But I'm just saying he doesn't get killed. You intended to kill him, but you
So he doesn't get killed, then you're
then
you're
go
not
back
going
to
to be chayav, right?
Go back to the lion example, right? Let's say you tie up a person and you intend for him to die, right? Why is that any different? Like you intend for him to die. Like if it's a lion who kills him, if it's what's
Yes, but you didn't kill him. That's what makes all the difference.
Those are
My intention is part of it, but I actually have to kill somebody.
right.
When the thing bounces off the wall,
It's still you. It's still
Right.
your energy.
That's the chiddush is when it bounces off the wall, it's still your throw.
Don't you get in trouble for trying to commit the act?
No, that's why.
Yes, but not in a based in.
Oh.
Right? The answer in all these cases, if you cause his death, Hashem will get you. Right? That's different. But that's different. Not a based in will not kill you. Yes. When we say putter, right?
You try.
Based in's going to come. Right. Based in can't kill you. Tani, Rav Tachifa. Rav Tachifa learned, Bamarava, Kame de Rebbe Avo. Kegon Elu Hamisachi Bekadur. Let's say we have these cases about people who are playing ball. Shahargu Toch Arba Amos. Let's say he kills a person within 4 amos. The guy's standing within 4 amos of the wall. Putter, he's exempt. Chutz li Arba Amos. If he's further than 4 amos away from the wall, then he's chayev. So Amarle Ravina Ravashi, Ravina says Ravashi, hey Chidami, what are you talking about? What kind of case is this? Right? Ida kanichale afilu purta nami. Ida lo nichale afilu tuva nami lo. Was the guy intending to kill the guy or not? What difference does it make how close he was to the wall? If he intended to kill him, so then even if he was closer to the wall, he should be chayev. And if he didn't intend to kill him, how cares if he was further away from the wall? He shouldn't be. Samarle, he says no. He says like this: Stam misachking bekadur kama minach nichale lememra de kahai gavna kochohu. He says, when people are playing ball, how much are they in control of their ability to aim? I guess, right? How much are they really able to aim and control that throw?
Right.
So therefore, if he throws it and he kills him, but then it should be the other way around. 1 second, the way I explained it. This is actually to talk about the original person. If the original person who threw the rock was within 4 amos of the wall, then we said, but toch arba amos he's putter. Further than arba amos he's chayev. So what's the reason why? Because we're saying that when a person stands closer to the wall, he intends to make the ball ricochet or bounce harder off the wall and go further away. So therefore, since he was closer to the wall, then within 4 amos, no, he says that's not what it is. Heim omdim kamash yoser samach l'kol them v'nei shiach n'kadar b'merchak rav yoser. V'im came. Ha'ised dasel shal zorek shiach sar kadar yoser merava amos mechos. That means when the person who was throwing the ball was standing close to the wall, he intended to throw the ball in such a way that it would land further away from the wall. That's why he was closer to the wall. I guess when you're closer to the wall, you're trying to hit it harder to bounce further away from the wall. Therefore, if the person who was killed was standing within 4 amos of the wall, that must be unintentional.
Right.
Accidental, because that wasn't what he's intending. If I'm standing at the wall going smashing it against the wall, it's because I'm trying to hit one far away. If it smashes off the wall and hits the guy who's close to the wall, that must be accidental, right? If the guy is further away, then that's where I intended to hit it, and that's why he's chayiv. That's what's going on. So
we'd be getting coaching tonight.
yes, how to play. That's I didn't realize. Yes,
murder
correct.
ball. It sounds
That's
like
a murder ball.
Murder ball. No, it was played as a kid.
Yes.
It's a murder ball. People did that.
Uraminhi. Okay, now we have a contradiction to this. Okay, the contradiction is like this. Okay, so now that is to say, what we've now established is that throwing something and bouncing off of something else is considered to be his koach. That's what we've established. Now, Uraminu, here's the contradiction to that. Hamakadesh v'nafal kiddush al yado. Let's say somebody is making the ashes of the paraduma. He's got ashes of the paraduma, and he's putting the ashes of the paraduma into the water. So the halacha is that the ashes have to be placed by a person into the water. Now, let's say he drops it, okay, and it falls in off of his hand, o outside, ve'achar kach nafal l'shokas, or it bounces off the side of the utensil and falls into the water. Then it's puzzle, bounced off of something. That makes it no good. So 1 second, you just told me that if it bounces off of something, it's still considered as koach. So why isn't this bouncing off of something still considered as koach? The answer is hachaba ma'askin. What are we going here? Bishoses. The guy dropped it. Right. He dropped the ash. He didn't throw it in, go and bounce it off the side of the utensil in order to get it in. He was holding it and went, whoa, and it bounced off the side of the utensil. Now it's not his intent. Tashma, come and listen. Machat shehaya nisuna al hacheres veshiza aleha. Let's say you have a needle that was tamei tumas mace, right? It touched a body, and now it's tamei, and it was placed on a pottery shard that was cheres, is clay, right? And so he sprinkles on this metal enough in order to make it tahor, right? So Safek al machat hiza, Safek al cheres hiza. Now he's not sure whether the water sprinkled and went right onto the needle, or whether it hit the clay utensil, bounced off of it, and then went onto the needle. Okay? So now, in that circumstance, hazaso Safek al cheres hiza umitzaleh, or whether it bounced off of the pottery utensil and splashed onto it, hazaso psula. His sprinkling is now puzzle. So why is that? Bounced off. It was his intention. He sprinkled it. Amar Rav Chinana bar Yehuda mishmei derav matza itmar. He says what it should say, and the Mishnah should say that it found its way. Meaning, you're not sure that he sprinkled it onto the pottery utensil, and then it slid down the pottery onto the needle, rather than he actually threw it with intent and it bounced off the pottery. So again, it's the same thing that if he threw it on and bounced it off, that would be considered to be his koach. But because he sprinkled it on and then it rolled onto it by itself, that's not considered to be sprinkling it on, and sprinkling is required in order to make it
sprinkle versus gravity.
Correct, exactly. That's what it sounds like. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, Haiman de kafse lechavrei v'ashkol alei bidka demaya. So let's say a person ties his friend up by the water, okay, and he points him towards the flow of the river that's coming toward him. So then gire didehu. So that's like a person who is shooting an arrow onto the person. Right? So he ties up, I guess he's got some kind of like a chute or like a water, I don't know, like a gutter kind of system, as I'm imagining, right? He's got the guy, he ties him up, and then he pours water into this utensil, which then rolls down, and it goes into the guy and drowns him that way. Okay, that's how he's killing him. So that's considered to be giri didei, his arrows that are shooting at him, and so therefore he's liable. Umechayev. Hani mili bekoach rishon. Now that only applies if the person dies based on his initial power, meaning he literally pours the water right onto the guy, right? Then he's killing him. Aval bekoach sheni groma biyamahu. However, if it is considered a secondary power, then it's only a grama. Then it's only a causative damage. causative murder. What is the distinction? Rashi says the distance the water has to travel. Right? Rashi says that the distance is because he put the guy a little bit further away from the water. Right? The water doesn't overflow right onto him. Right? The water spills into someplace else, and then it rolls down eventually to where he is. That's just a grumma. So if he literally puts the guy into a place where the river overflows and kills him, then he did it. But if he puts it in a place so that the water goes someplace, which then eventually rolls down to him, that's koach sheni, and he's not liable in that case. V'amar Rav Papa says, Zorek tzrur lamala. Let's say somebody throws a rock up in the air. V'hochel it's dodin, and he doesn't throw it directly up in the air. He throws it up, and it moves over. As it goes up, it goes in like sort of a parabola, and then it comes down and v'harga and kills somebody. Then he's chayiv. Then he's liable, right? Why? Because Amar Le Mar Baravashi Rav Papa. So Mar Baravashi explains to Rav Papa, my time. What's the reason? Vishum de kochohu. It was his strength, because if it wasn't his strength, then how did it get from here to here? My throw pushed the rock over to where that person was. So I kachol tizel le'el, ve'ilav kocho tazel letachas. He says,
Kavanah to kill the person?
yes.
Or you just throw a rock?
No, he has to have kavanah because otherwise you can't be chayav,
That's how I was
right? So he says, if it was, well, wait a second. If the throw is his intentional force, so then why does it have to travel a distance? He could throw it up and it could come straight down and hit a person, and he also should be liable, right? Because he caused that force. So he says, no. The answer is if you throw it straight up and then it comes straight down, that's just gravity. The gravity killed him. He didn't kill him, right? It's only because you threw it up and it travels a distance. The fact that it traveled over, that's your strength that caused it to be pushed over. Gravity is the thing. You threw it up. Gravity grabbed it and pulled it down. Gravity is the thing that killed it. So therefore, you caused it to kick into gravity, but nevertheless, that's not you killing. That's a grumma. So if you go straight up, not.
So if we were on the moon and I threw it, then it would have overshot the guy a lot. So it is the gravity that's.
Yeah, but it's a combination, I guess. So I guess that's the truth. You're right. It has to be it's the combination. But because I guess that's his koach, right? Rashi says, "Eno koach, eno kocho chazak, ela ktsas kocho yeshkan." It's not really a strong force, but it's a little force, right?
So in today's world, you have someone with a gun, and he shoots up in the air, and it comes down, and it kills somebody.
I would wonder whether shooting somebody with a gun is murder at all. Or is it a grumma?
Because it's the force of the gun. You're gonna say.
The gun is the thing that kills the person, not me.
Yeah, but
I pulled the trigger.
Depends if you have the t-shirt that says guns don't kill people.
Throwing the rock up.
The Second Amendment argument.
No?
Guns don't kill people.
No,
People kill people.
Throwing the rock up in the air, where it comes down to gravel, is the same thing. Because it's in the end, it's the force of gravity that's bringing it down. You moved it.
No, because if it wasn't for my force, it wouldn't have even gotten to the guy.
If it wasn't for your force, you wouldn't know that the trigger wouldn't be pulled. It wouldn't be
No, because the trigger is the same thing as my action of moving my finger is not a murder action. My pulling the trigger caused the hammer to get pulled back, which caused the bullet to get hit, which caused the explosion, which caused the end of the bullet to go shooting out. I'm pretty convinced it's way more grumma than anything we've been talking about.
That's an explain that in court.
It wasn't me.
Did we deal with shooting an arrow?
We did talk about an arrow, right? Now, this is a good question because an arrow is sort of the same thing. I pull it back. I don't shoot the arrow. I pull the rope, and nevertheless, we consider that to be. So it's a good question. I'm going to look that. I'm going to see if anybody talks about that, because that's not considered grumma. Because we had the case where we said only pulling the shield away was considered to be not a, which means that the actual shot from an arrow would definitely be a murder. But that's only perhaps it's because my letting go is an action.
But it's your force that leads to that force. It's the same. I think it's the same as throwing a rock. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay, so We're thinking. I'm just saying, it's not so simple, right? Okay. Tana Rabbanan, Rabbi's learned. Hiko asara b'nei adam. Let's say 10 people beat a guy up. Okay. Everybody has to have intent to kill, and everybody has to hit him hard enough to kill him, right? Otherwise, there's no question here. Basara makalos with 10 sticks, mace, and the guy dies. Bein babas achas, bein bezachar. That doesn't matter whether they all hit him at the same time or one hit him after the other. Zep, bezachar zep, turin. They are all exempt. They're not chayav misa. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir Rabbi Yehuda ben says, bezachar zeh. No, if you hit one after the other, Achron Chayev, the last guy, is liable. Mibnei, why? Shekir ves misaso. Because even though the first guy hit him hard enough to kill him, the last guy made his death quicker. And everybody quickened it a little bit. But the last guy who quickened it the last bit, he's the guy who's liable. Amar Rav Yochanan says, Ushneim mikro echad darshu. Both of them learned it from the same pasuk. V'ish ki yakek kol nefesh adam, a person who hits all of the soul of the person. Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold, kol nefesh, what does it mean, all the soul? Adeka kol nefesh. You're not chayiv until you completely kill the person. If you're only part of the murder, then you're not liable. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Savri, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, no, kol nefesh means kol dehu, any small amount of misa. Any small amount of misa also is going to obligate you. So therefore, everybody, that last guy is chayiv. Nefesh, so kol dehu nefesh. Amar Rava says, Hakol modim, everybody agrees, but horig is a treifa. If somebody kills a treifa is a person, or an animal, but a person in this case, who already has a terminal condition, an injury that he's not going to survive. So he's already a dead man walking. Everybody agrees that if you kill a treifa, shehu potter, that he's exempt from Beis Din for killing that person because he killed a dead person. Right? You're only chayiv if you kill a nefesh, a live person. Begoses bidei shemayim, somebody is ill from, he has a disease, so then shu chayiv. Then, for sure, if you kill somebody who's ill, right, even though he's he looks like he's on his deathbed, you're chayiv, for sure, for killing him, because you don't know, sometimes he might get better. Lo nechlaku, the argument is begoses bidei adam. The issue is, when a person has an injury from a human being, is that considered to be the murder or not? Mar medami leila treifa. One opinion says it's like a treifa. Or mar medami leila goses. The other says that this is more like a goses case. Bidei shemayim, that is from heaven. Man de medami leila treifa. The one who considers the goses that was beaten up by a person is similar to a treifa. My time alone medami leila goses bidei shemayim. Why doesn't he compare it to a circumstance of a goses that comes from shemayim? Goses bidei shemayim lo is avid be ma'isa, because a goses from heaven, no action was taken to hurt him. So, hi, Isabed be Maisa, and the case of a person who was beaten up, an action happened to him. That's why it's not comparable. The one who does compare this person who was beaten up to a gosis b'dei shemayim, my time a low. What's the reason why lo medami leila treifa? Why doesn't he consider him like a treifa? Because treifa mechatchi simonim. Because a treifa, he's got a severe, significant injury. He's got things that are so damaged in him that he will never recover. Ha lo mechatchi simanim. This guy is not injured to that degree. Tani Tana Kamed Rav Sheshes. They taught the following in front of Rav Sheshes. V'ish kiyake kol nefesh adam. A person who hits any person. Lahavi hamake es chavero ve'ein bo kedei lahamis. Uba acher vehimiso. Let's say you have a person that hits another person, but he doesn't hit him hard enough to kill him. And then another person comes along and he kills him. Shehu chayev. That second person is going to be liable. Ein bo kedei lahamis. So if the first guy hit him, but he didn't hit him enough to kill him, pshita. Obviously, the second guy is liable. The first guy wasn't going to kill him. The second guy killed him. Ella, rather, it goes like this: Yesh bo kedei lahamis. The first person hits him hard enough that he would have killed him. Uba achir lahamiso. Then the second guy comes and actually kills him. Shehu chayev. The second guy is liable. Ustamak Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. That follows Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira's opinion that we said before, that if everybody was hitting the guy, the last guy is liable. Amar Rava. Rava's a golden more. Rava says, Ahorig is a treifa. Somebody kills treifa. His potter is exempt from Beis Din. Utreifa shaharig bifnei Beis Din chayiv. Now, a treifa who kills another person in front of the court, then he is chayiv because he's a rodef. So they could stop him in the middle. Shalo bifnei Beis Din. But if it's not in front of the people of the Beis Din, and later on they have to bring him with witnesses to Beis Din, he's potter. The treifa is potter. Bifnei Beis Din chayev. Why is he chayev if he's in front of the Beis Din? Because tichsiv ubiyarta harami kirbecha, you have to destroy that which is evil from your midst. Shelo bifnei Beis Din. But if it's not, and they have to bring him to court, he's patur. Why? Because this treifa, you cannot cause the witnesses against him to become Eidim that are Zomimim. Why? Because if witnesses come along that are Eidim Zomimim, and they testify that this treifa murdered, right, and then they're found to be liars, well, you can't kill those Eidim Zomimim because they were testifying about a treifa who's already dead, which means they wouldn't be liable for killing him. So therefore, the witnesses against him can't become Eidim Zomimim. So v'chol edus yetzi yochol azima lo shma edus, and any edus which you cannot which you can't make zomimim is not edus, is not testimony. Do you want to stop here, or do you want to grab it? Yeah, 9:30 already, or we can try to rush to the Mishnah. Let's stop here. We'll stop here.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll stop here.
Go ahead.